Amber McCarn, and today I'm going to tell you how to study effectively. So first, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to picture that you have a really big test coming up. I want you to start feeling butterflies in your stomach. I want you to feel your breathing get shallow. Now picture looking at your review, and suddenly you feel like you don't know any of the concepts that are on it, and you start to panic. Open your eyes. This is an experience that all of us have experienced at some point or another. Now, the problem with this is that we are under immense stress when we panic. Now, according to neuropsychologist Dr. William Stixrud, when we stress, the lower part of our brain is what is stimulated. When that happens, we are no longer thinking thoughtful thoughts. We are acting instinctually. This is where panic comes from. Because instinctually, when we are stressed, our instinct is to panic. The good thing about this is that it can be avoided. So you're probably wondering what makes me an expert. What do I know about studying? Well, I know a lot about studying, and I know it through experience. Now, when I was in high school, I didn't have to study. Information came easily to me. Inside the classroom was enough. But whenever I got to college, the very first test grade I received was a C. Now, I don't think that this C is a bad grade, but I felt that I had done everything that I could to prepare for that test. I felt that I had studied, but obviously I had done something wrong. So I researched it, and what I found helped me immensely. That C is still the lowest test grade that I've received, and I'm a junior. So I'm going to tell you what you can expect from this speech. First, I'm going to tell you techniques that are not effective. Then I'll tell you study techniques that are effective. And then I will tell you how to implement these techniques in a step-by-step process. So we'll start with techniques that are not effective. Now, you guys probably know that not studying for a test is not effective. You also probably know that studying the wrong information is not effective. But what about those study skills that you've learned from kindergarten? What about highlighting and underlining and rereading? Those are great skills, right? Well, according to a recent study by 6 different scientists, those skills are not effective. In fact, the least effective 3 study skills are highlighting, underlining, and rereading. Now, the reason for this is because through their experimentation, these scientists found that when students were asked to do monotonous tasks where they repeated the same action over and over again, their brains checked out. When you highlight, you're focused on where the color is. You're focused on ending on the right word. You aren't taking in the information that you're highlighting. The same thing goes for when you're underlining. You're focusing on making your line straight. You're focused on making sure that you underline the right thing, but you're not taking in the information that you're underlining. And I don't know about you guys, but I can read the same sentence 25 times and not get a single thing out of it if I'm not thinking about what I'm reading. The bad thing about this is that those 3 study strategies are the top 3 used by college students. Now, this was extremely groundbreaking because these are skills that have been taught from the lower grades on. After this study, teachers found that they had to teach students new ways to study, and a lot of times that doesn't happen. So you have a culture of panic in our colleges. So, now that you know what doesn't work, let's talk about what does work. I know I keep talking about scientists, but I'm going to bring a few more up. In a study done by a group of biology professors, they found that students who were asked to do active tasks while they were studying, whether they were experimenting or whether they were explaining the topics to one another, those students learned better. Those students tested better over the information that they learned. So what are some skills that are active study skills? Active study skills, according to that first study that I talked about, are distributed practice and self-assessment. Distributive practice is when you learn information bit by bit. And the benefits to this is that you learn the information rather than memorize the information. Self-assessment is when you use the information in different ways. So you take the information and you create a question for yourself, and then you have to find the answer to that question. So not only are you having to know the information, you're having to think critically about the information to create a question for yourself and to answer it. Okay, so now you know techniques that aren't effective and techniques that are. But how do you use those techniques that are effective in your everyday studying? Step 1, take notes. Proper study techniques begin in the classroom. Now, some people might think that they don't use their notes. They don't take good notes. That's fine. The thing is that while you're taking those notes, you're actively involved in the lecture. So even if you don't use those notes to study, you are taking in more information during the lecture. Step 2. When you receive your review, complete it as soon as possible. This is exposing you to the material early on. You don't have to memorize it right away, but make sure that you don't have any questions about it. Make sure that you remember everything that you've gone over. This also gives you time to go to your professor and ask for help. Step 3. Use your completed review to create questions for yourself. This is that self-assessment technique. So in the self-assessment technique, you create these questions for yourself. Well, if you have your review, you can use the review questions, but you can also create the reciprocal of that question. So for example, if it asks, what color is the sky? And the answer is blue. Then, when you create questions for yourself, ask, blue is the color of what? And your answer is the sky. Now you know that information from all angles. Now, step 4. Break your questions into sections and study one section a day. I usually do this with flashcards. So if you have a section of information to study each day, it doesn't seem so intimidating. Today I'll study this, and tomorrow I'll study that. And then by the next day, I'll know this and that. Step 5. Take breaks. This is part of that distributed practice technique. See, when you study, if you try to cram a whole bunch of information into one section, then you can't take it all in. Study at intervals with breaks in between. Step 6. Relax on test day. Try to establish a routine so that you do not get yourself worked up into a panic. Well, there you have it, 6 easy steps. So, let's review what we've learned. First, active techniques are better than passive techniques. Active techniques include distributive practice and self-assessment. Passive techniques are those techniques like highlighting, underlining, and rereading. We also discussed how to study step by step. Remember that next time you go to study. So I want you to close your eyes again. This time imagine that you have a really big test coming up. But I want you to remember that you're going to take in the information bit by bit. I want you to remember that you're prepared for this test. It's not intimidating. You know how to study. Now I want you to realize that you're going to be successful on your test. Open your eyes. That is the outcome that we want. And that is the outcome that I can promise you you will get if you use the techniques that I've taught you today.